is to ramp up our commitment to the kids and students in our church and in our community. And Elevate, I'm glad that you're here. We love you guys, and you're going to hear some stats that you're going to be quite well informed about that your parents probably won't be, so hang with me for the next few moments. I had a meeting in my office with our youth staff, kids and student staff, and I said, I have a feeling that kids these days are growing up in a world far different from the one I grew up in, and they said, that's true, Bill. And over the course of about 45 minutes, I learned that the dramatic increase in entertainment and media exposure has reshaped the entire world and the mental process of the kids and students who are growing up today. Most kids spend between 4 to 6 hours a day looking at a screen, be it a laptop, a cell phone, a TV screen, whatever. They will see 200,000 acts of violence and 16,000 murders by the time they're 18. Many of them will be exposed to video games that are all about killing. Many of them will be on their computer, and porn will find them if they don't find porn. 19% of high school students experience being bullied, and that number almost doubles when you add online bullying, something I never knew anything about when I was growing up. What I heard next was so disheartening that it's bothered me ever since. Staggering numbers of kids and students are dealing with depression these days. That used to be just an adult situation. Now it's with kids and students, 7 and 8-year-olds who are feeling hopeless already. And they're feeling unloved, and often they have no one to turn to. Sometimes their parents are both working and they come home exhausted. Extended family members live out of town, so there's no grandparents or aunts or uncles to turn to. Suicide is now the 4th leading cause for death for kids ages 10 to 14. 150,000 teens are treated each year for self-inflicted wounds. And I could barely wrap my head around all this. And then you just add in the total chaos right now of gender confusion and bathroom controversies. Suffice it to say, it's a very tough environment that kids are trying to navigate these days. And to offset all of that, as senior leaders, we feel strongly that we need to ramp up our commitment to kids and students. First, some good news. You need some good news about now, don't you? Here's some good news. Because of your generosity, we already have a fantastic staff and ample ministry budgets in place for Promised Land and Special Friends and Elevate and Impact and our young adult ministry. And we have about half the resources already in place to remodel part of our Promised Land facilities that have not been updated in more than 20 years. At the end of the year, we're going to invite you to give a sacrificial gift to the year-end fund, and we believe that that will raise all the additional finances necessary to complete that remodeling project. We hope to start construction on that before year-end. We're hoping as a result of this remodeling process, we can have a much easier check-in process for Promised Land parents and provide much better small group space for kids and students. But if we're really going to ramp up our commitment to our kids and to our students and young adults, it's going to take far more than a facelift of our facilities. It's going to involve a mindset shift here in our entire adult congregation. Parents of our kids and students, we need to have a little heart-to-heart conversation, and with your permission, I'd like to have it here and now. When I chat with our fantastic staff and volunteers of our children's ministry and junior high ministry who love your kids more than you will ever know, guess what they say is the single most defeating dynamic as they seek to build the faith of our kids? Do you know? Do you have any guesses? It's the inconsistency and irregularity of how often parents take their kids to church. Now, our high school groups and our young adult groups, this isn't so much an issue because these students can figure out how they can drive or get a ride to these ministries. But in our children's ministry and junior high program, whether or not our fantastic staff and volunteers can build the love of Christ into our kids and students boils down to about one basic issue. Will parents take their kids and students to church consistently? And if I were to give the parents of Willow South Barrington a report card grade on this matter right now, regretfully, I would have to give you a C-. It's a bit harsh, you say, my gosh. Our fantastic staff in Promised Land and Elevate pray on their knees every day that parents are going to take their kids to church every week, 4 out of 4 weekends, because when that happens, relationships build and trust builds, and there's a continuity of learning that makes the love of Christ more understandable, and it gets deeper and deeper in the life of a kid or a student. When the kid only comes occasionally, all that continuity and the relationships and the trust is compromised. In the early days of Willow, this 4 for 4 kind of parents bringing their kids to our student and kid ministries, this actually happened. And when parents got a little careless and would only take their kids to church 3 out of 4 weekends, I would find out about it, and I would read the parents the riot act and confront them like only a 28-year-old wet behind the ears pastor can. In those days, I was just fearless. I wish I had the videos. One time, I got so frustrated, I asked parents if I could call them personally every Sunday morning like a receptionist would at a hotel. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This is your wake-up call from your fired-up pastor. Get your backsides out of bed and get your kids to church. And have a nice day, and then hang up. Parents love that. Trust me, they just love that idea. But it reminded them to bring their kids to church 4 out of 4 weekends, not 3 out of 4. Move the clock ahead now about 30 years. Guess how often, on average, Willow parents here at South Barrington bring their kids to church? It's not 4 out of 4. It's not 3 out of 4. It's not 2 out of 4. It's 1.3 out of 4. And I think that deserves about a C-. Now, I know right now, all the defenses are going up. You're not going to carry a picture of me in your wallet anymore. You're mad. And so, because every parent has all these kinds of reasons why they can't bring their kids to church 4 out of 4 weekends. Kids' sports, kids' birthday parties, kids' overnights, weekends at Grandma's, Uncle Fred's, at the cabin, at the lake, weekends downtown, Cubs games, Bears games, Blackhawks games, Bulls games. I've heard them all. But when I ask parents what the long-term effect of putting church at the very bottom of the priority list is going to have on their kids, well, then they look at me with blank stare. They have really often not thought this through. And I say, if you've been very sporadic in taking your kids to church when they're young, do you think when they get in their high school years that church is magically going to rise to the top of their priority list when they can make their decisions themselves? Do you think if there's been inconsistency for the first 5, 10, 15 years of their life in terms of coming to church, you think when a kid goes off to college, it's going to magically, staying part of the church, is going to magically rise to the top of their priority list on some campus somewhere? Parents, please understand, and grandparents, you can help your kids with this. The consistency with which you engage your kids and students in the life of the church when they are young will have a direct effect on their engagement in the church as they mature and make their decisions on their own over time. And the way the math usually works is that if church was not a super high priority for parents, it will be about 25% less a priority for their kids, and then about 25% less a priority for their kids. And in just a few generations, God and church have pretty much faded out of the picture altogether. And that's a sad story. So if we're going to really ramp up our commitment to our kids and students, it starts with parents making a commitment before God to prioritize getting their kids to Promised Land and Elevate and Impact every single week. 4 out of 4. Parents, just figure it out and do it. Your kids, not now and not when they're 18, maybe when they're 28 or 32, they're going to take you out to dinner sometime and thank you for making church a priority because it set the entire lineage up to keep God first. And this is something we can do.